This story is about a routine surgery gone wrong when alien doctors cut into a human and something alive moves under his skin. Dr. Vecta's surgical lights glowed like twin moons above the table as she leaned over the human, adjusting the xenobiotic scalpels. Her colleague, Dr. Wren, had prepped the patient, a man called Jack Turner, with what they considered routine tissue repair. Jack lay unconscious, his chest rising and falling in regular, shallow breaths. Jack's journey to this colony hospital began 5 years ago, after a shuttle crash left him with broken ribs and cracked vertebrae. It had been a long, slow recovery, months of physical therapy, occasional fevers, and a persistent ache, but nothing beyond the norm. The colony's best surgeons rebuilt him, and he rebuilt his life. He never thought to mention the parasite. With a steady hand, Vecta made the first incision over Jack's healed scar from a previous injury. The scalpel slid in, slicing through skin. That's when it happened. A sudden, violent twitch. Something shifted under Jack's flesh. Not muscle, but an undeniable living organism. The operating theater froze. Nurses remained still. Monitors beeped an uneven tone. Vecta pulled back, her silver blade hovering over the wound. Renz's eyes widened. "Did you see that?" Her voice cracked. "It moved," Vecta said softly. A shuttle pilot nurse gasped. Dr. Molick, a stern figure with mottled violet skin, leaned in. "Continue." "Scan," another insisted. "Run scans, now." Dr. Tersch, arms tucked behind him, barked the order. His eyes darted between the monitor and Jack's chest. But Moloch shook his head. "Wake him," his voice solid. "We can't operate until we know what we're dealing with. Groggy, he'll die under trauma." Vecta's objection hung in the humid air. Everyone stared at Jack's chest, now a potential biohazard. Guami continued, leading his eyeball across an other-wide, flat, minuscule. "Better alive," Moloch whispered. In an instant, chaos. A nurse jabbed a wake-up stim injector into Jack's arm. He coughed awake, eyes blinking as the bright lights blinded him. His chest leaked a thin line of blood. He felt the weight of dozens of gazes on him. "Where am I?" he mumbled, voice rough. "You're in surgery," Vecta said, covering her shock with professional distance. "Your chest," she gestured. Something moved. Jack sat up on the table, groggy but furious. "What do you mean something moved under my skin?" His voice rose. "Explain, now!" Tersch stepped forward, voice trembling. "Something slithered. We need scans, tests, now." Jack closed his eyes. Memories flickered like starbursts in his skull. 5 years ago, during the crash, he recalled on the hospital ship a sharp itch, a slight sensation under his ribs. He'd scratch until a nurse frowned and gave him an antiseptic wipe. He assumed it was scar tissue settling, nothing more. He opened his eyes again. I know what it is." His words surprised himself. "And you're gonna hate it." Vecta stepped back, scalpel still in hand. "Explain." Jack cleared his throat. He'd been told the colony's medical protocols demanded disclosure of foreign bodies. He should have mentioned it sooner. But he'd been so tired, so focused on rebuilding. "I think I've had a parasite for 5 years, Jack said, voice steadying. "It's symbiotic. It helps me heal faster. When I broke my ribs, new tissue formed weeks earlier than expected. Infection risk was lower. I forgot the details. I didn't mean to hide it." The room gasped again. Some nurses murmured. Wren leaned down. "A symbiotic parasite," she whispered, tone curious. "Yes," Jack nodded, a weary grin tugging. It lives under my skin. I can feel it, sometimes pulsing gently after exercise." The doctors glanced at each other. Tersch sighed. "We wanted to continue to fix scar tissue damage. Now we have a live creature in your chest. We need protocols." Jack sat still, bleeding lightly from the incision. That itch from years ago, the odd sensation, he realized they were the parasite's heartbeat. Vecta took a deep breath. "All right," she said. "We'll halt. Get scans, full blood work. Let's find out what it is, if it's safe, if it's harmful. You okay with that?" Jack nodded, tension easing. "Just don't wake you up like that again," Wren finished. Jack managed a tired smile. Someone switched off the scalpel light. Vecta covered the wound with a transparent dome to contain unknown fluids. Nurses hustled for diagnostic equipment. Moloch hovered, concern in his gaze. Jack lay back. His pulse raced not from the awakening, but from the sudden unveiling of an old companion. He felt a strange relief. He'd carried this parasite alone long enough. In the corridor, scanners whirred. Technicians prepared MRIs and biopsies. Dr. Vecta tapped her console. Wren murmured, "Human resilience never ceases to astonish." Jack heard just faintly. He closed his eyes and tried to breathe easy. The scans began. The quiet rhythm of machinery enveloped them all. The MRI lab on Outpost 17 wasn't built for emergencies involving unknown internal organisms. It was built for sprains, muscle tears, and the occasional unlucky technician with radiation burns. But now it hummed urgently around Jack Turner's body, cocooned in its steel cylinder, scanning every centimeter of him as though it could answer the anxious stares behind the glass. Dr. Vecta paced slowly. She kept her eyes on the screen, where the first frames began to appear. Layers of Jack's muscle tissue, clean slices of data. Then, deeper, the faint mass became visible. It wasn't a tumor. It had curvature, density shifts, nodal structures. It wasn't embedded in an organ. It sat nestled between his ribs like a coiled wire. She leaned in. "Is that a neural node?" "Could be," said Tersch from behind her. "Maybe it's interfacing with his nervous system." Wren shook her head. "There's no sign of inflammation. That thing's been there for years and hasn't caused any immune reaction. If anything, it's been tolerated." Jack, still horizontal on the sliding MRI table, sighed. "It's not just tolerated. It does things." "Like what exactly?" Vecta asked. He turned his head slightly toward the intercom. "You ever sprain an ankle and walk the next day?" "I did, 3 times. Cuts that should have taken 2 weeks closed in days. I stopped getting sick. Scratches healed overnight." "And you didn't think that was odd?" Tersch's voice tightened. "I thought I got lucky," Jack mumbled. Didn't want to jinx it. The image sharpened. The parasite, a sinuous coil, no longer than 20 centimeters, had tendrils extending outward in a spidery fan. Some of them hovered against nerves without breaching. Others tucked into vascular tissue, trailing alongside veins like ivy on a fence. The structure pulsed faintly. The silence in the control room was thick. "This thing is built for integration," Wren whispered. Despite being like each other's first official pod, the two sides or invasion, Tersch countered. Just very patient invasion. Vecta stepped back. "Let's not jump to either." Jack sat up as the machine powered down and the table rolled him out. "So, what now? You gonna yank it out?" The trio of doctors exchanged a look. Wren finally said, "We're going to do more imaging. No surgery until we're sure removing it won't kill you or it." "Why does that sound like you're more worried about it?" Jack muttered. Back in recovery, Jack was confined to a biomonitored bed. They patched the small incision from earlier, sterile bandages sealing it. An IV fed fluids into his arm. Vecta checked vitals while Wren adjusted the bed's incline. Jack felt like a medical exhibit. A nurse approached with a tray of nutrient supplements and antiseptics. Jack barely looked at it. "So, what does this thing want?" he asked, staring at the ceiling. Wren sat on the bed's edge. "Symbiotes don't usually have wants. They just exist, adapt. Some bond, some don't. Yours seems well adjusted. It hasn't caused inflammation, hasn't migrated, hasn't triggered any abnormal immune response. And it's aiding tissue recovery. That's incredible." Jack turned his head toward her. "You're not going to treat me like a science experiment, right?" Wren offered a small smile. "Only medically." Jack groaned. "Fantastic." Later that day, they brought in a xenobiologist, Dr. Val Kryn, a towering specimen of the drool species, cloaked in a thermal robe and gliding slowly on 4 legs. He eyed the scan, then Jack. "I've seen similar nodal symmetry in parasitic fauna on Keyleth Prime," Kryn murmured, "but nothing this refined. It's not just passive. This one is reactive." Jack sat up straighter. "Meaning?" Kryn tapped the scan with a thick finger. It responded to the scalpel. Reactivity implies consciousness, at least rudimentary. It flinched before it was touched. Vecta stared. "So it knew?" "It felt." Kryn's voice dropped. "You are not its host. You are its habitat." Jack blinked. "Well, that's uncomfortable." They spent the rest of the evening running diagnostics. Biopsy was ruled out after a trial showed that even attempting to puncture one tendril caused a chain reaction of microspasms across Jack's nervous system. His hand twitched involuntarily for 5 minutes before stabilizing. He hated the tests, the poking, the prodding, the endless data points taken from blood and skin and hair. The worst part wasn't the discomfort, it was the way everyone looked at him, like he was a puzzle, not a person. By nightfall, Vecta finally allowed the lights to dim. Wren stayed behind. "Jack," she said gently, "we have to ask, where did you get it? Any clue?" He thought back. The crash. I was out cold after it. Woke up in a medbay orbiting Cauldrus 6. I was stitched up by an automated unit, no staff, just drones. Maybe something hitched a ride. Wren frowned. "You were unconscious for almost 16 hours, right?" "Yeah, why?" "A lot can happen in 16 hours. Jack shifted in his bed, grimacing. "Tell me about it." Suddenly, he flinched. What lay beneath the thick layers? Wren stood. Jack clutched his side. It just moved, like more than usual. Not just a twitch, like it's stretching. Wren grabbed a scanner and ran it over his chest. "It's fine, heart's steady, it's not attacking you." "Maybe it's just mad you woke me up with a scalpel," Jack said dryly. Wren snorted. "Could be." But Jack didn't laugh. He stared at the monitor, watching the parasites glow in the imaging overlay. "What if it gets mad again?" "We'll be ready," Wren said. "Yeah," Jack murmured, "but I won't be." The next morning, a new complication arrived. Dr. Tersch marched into the recovery ward with a notice from Colonial Medical Command. A classified team of xeno-integrated pathologists was en route. Estimated arrival 2 days. Until then, Jack was under observation, no additional procedures allowed. "That's a lot of attention for a guy with a living Band-Aid in his chest," Jack said. "You're technically a biocontainment subject now," Vecta explained. "And no, I don't love saying that." Jack groaned and buried his face in the pillow. "Great. Next thing you'll say is they'll quarantine the whole floor." "They already did," Wren said from the doorway. He looked up. "What?" "Containment field's already active. No one in or out without clearance. It's standard protocol." Jack blinked. "You're telling me I'm in a glowing box." "A safe, glowing box," she corrected. "You're not in danger, but until we know everything about this thing, I'm a walking question mark." Wren hesitated. "You're a unique case." Jack lay back, sighing. "Lucky me." Outside the containment field, Kryn continued running simulations based on Jack's scans. Vecta pulled tissue regeneration logs from Jack's prior injuries. Each confirmed something the doctors couldn't explain. He healed too fast, too cleanly. Even nerve fiber repair was ahead of baseline. Vecta turned to the others. "If we can understand how this organism aids in tissue recovery, we could change human medicine. It could end chronic pain, amputations, long-term rehab." Tersch folded his arms. "Or we invite 1,000 unpredictable symbiotes into humans without knowing the price." Wren looked at Jack through the glass. He'd dozed off again, his vitals stable. "We already invited one," she said. Tersch didn't reply. The first sign that something was wrong came at 3:17 local time. Jack jerked upright in his containment bed, eyes wide, mouth open but silent. His skin glistened with cold sweat. Vecta, half asleep in the monitoring station, looked up just in time to see his heart rate spike on the console. She was through the containment barrier in seconds, Ren trailing behind her. "Jack?" Vecta called. "Talk to me." He couldn't. His chest heaved as if he'd just finished a sprint. One hand clutched his ribs. Ren grabbed the portable scanner and swept it over his torso. "No cardiac irregularities. Parasite is... Wait. What?" Vecta leaned in. "It's moving." Ren's voice tightened. "Rapidly. Around the intercostals." Jack let out a low groan, eyes finally locking with Vecta's. "It's dreaming." Vecta blinked. "What?" "It dreams," Jack said between gasps. "That's what it does sometimes. When I'm out. I forgot." "You forgot to mention your internal parasite dreams?" Ren nearly dropped the scanner. "I don't mean full-on REM cycles. It reacts to my brain waves when I sleep too deep. It wakes up." "Wakes up?" Vecta asked carefully. "Gets active. Recalibrates itself. That's the only way I can describe it. Sometimes it twitches. Sometimes it adjusts things. Like it's doing housekeeping." Ren pulled up the last 15 minutes of neural telemetry. "No seizure activity, but there's feedback. Biofeedback between the symbiote and the medulla." "Can it read your thoughts?" Vecta asked cautiously. Jack laughed once, bitter. "If it can, it hasn't shown much interest." The monitors steadied. Jack wiped sweat from his brow. "That was a bad one. Doesn't usually wake me." "It could be reacting to the containment field," Ren said. "Maybe the electromagnetic mesh is agitating it." "Or it knows we're watching," Vecta added. That earned a sideways glance from Jack. "Is that supposed to help me sleep?" They didn't answer. Ren sedated him lightly with a low-dose relaxant that wouldn't interfere with the parasite's signals. Vecta adjusted the barrier settings, reducing EM intensity. Within minutes, Jack was unconscious again, this time peacefully. But no one on staff slept well after that. The next morning brought the arrival of the team from Colonial Medical Command, 4 specialists and a heavily reinforced hoverpod that landed with less grace than intimidation. The lead was Dr. Samuel Greaves, a man whose uniform still bore the tight creases of orbital authority and whose eyes looked like they hadn't blinked in 3 days. Vecta met him at the airlock. "Dr. Vecta," he said, offering a curt nod. "I've read your reports. I'll be taking lead from here." "On the research?" Vecta asked. "On the subject?" He motioned. "Toward the recovery ward?" "He melts as a name." Greaves didn't blink. "He has a parasite." They filed into the observation room. Jack was sitting up, flipping through a digital pad of ancient Earth comedy, something about a man in a talking car. He didn't notice them until Greaves entered. "You're the cavalry?" Jack asked, nodding toward the newcomers. Greaves stepped forward. "I'm here to determine whether you pose a threat to this colony." "Do I look threatening?" "You look contagious." Jack set the pad down. "You ever think maybe I'm the victim here?" Reese didn't answer. Instead, he turned to his team and began issuing commands. They scanned, sampled, reviewed data logs. A second scan confirmed what Vecta and Ren already knew. The parasite wasn't spreading, replicating, or producing any detectable toxins. It simply sat inside Jack, like a sleeper curled under a blanket of muscle. The debate started just after lunch. "We should excise it," Greaves insisted, "isolate it in a sterile tank, and begin full-spectrum analysis. Remove the human from the equation." "He'll die," Vecta snapped. "We already know it's integrated into his nervous and circulatory systems. Removing it would be like tearing out a buried nerve cluster." "Then sedate him for extraction," Greaves said. "Deep coma, minimal pain." Jack stared at the glass, listening to everything. Rain leaned in. "You want to harvest him like a lab frog?" "Medical ethics don't apply to invasive organisms," Greaves said coldly. "If we let this continue, we might end up with an epidemic. What happens if it decides to jump hosts?" "It hasn't," Ren shot back, "in 5 years." Greaves gestured to the screen. "You're willing to gamble that?" Jack tapped the glass. Everyone turned. "I'm still here," he said, still listening. You're talking about me like I'm a bad experiment. You are a risk, Greaves said, stepping up to the barrier. One we cannot afford to ignore. Jack stood slowly, his chest still hurt from the earlier movement, but he ignored it. Do you even hear yourself? I crash-landed, got fixed up by bots, healed faster than I should have, and instead of studying me with me, you want to cut me open and hope the alien slug doesn't scream? Silence. Greaves turned to Vecta. If he refuses consent, I'll order containment in orbital stasis. Not without council approval, she said. He's a citizen. His rights don't end just because something saved his life. Greaves looked at Jack one more time. Then we wait, but the clock's ticking. That night Jack didn't sleep. Neither did the parasite. He felt it coiling tighter than usual, nerves buzzing like after a hard workout. It wasn't pain, not exactly. More like pressure, restlessness. He rolled onto his side and whispered, You feeling it too? A pulse fluttered under his ribs. He flinched. You don't like him either, huh? Another pulse, stronger. In the dim light, Jack had a realization. You're scared. He sat up and thought for a long time. The next morning, Jack called for Vecta. I want to transfer. She raised an eyebrow. Where? Somewhere quiet, away from Greaves. Somewhere I can think. He won't allow it. Then I need a deal. He laid out his terms. Regular scans, full biological transparency, no evasive behavior, no contact with unauthorized personnel. In return, he wanted distance from Greaves and his scalpels. Vecta brought the proposal forward. Wren backed it. Even Kryn signed off. Greaves refused until the parasite acted up again. This time it wasn't a twitch. It was a broadcast. At 2:11 local time, the parasite sent out a low-frequency pulse. All the monitors in the ward glitched. 2 of the external containment drones crashed. A medtech fainted. The pulse lasted 12 seconds. When it ended, Jack sat bolt upright in bed. She's scared, he said. She thought you were coming. Greaves stared. She? I don't know, Jack muttered. That's just how it feels. It's not trying to kill me. It's trying to live. Greaves finally relented. By noon, Jack was relocated to a side module on the far edge of the medical campus, a less intense containment field, less scrutiny. Vector and Wren oversaw all monitoring. As he settled into the new room, Jack looked at the wall console. The heartbeat of the parasite, a steady blue line, throbbed gently across the display. He's calming down, Wren noted. For now, Jack murmured. He rubbed his sternum. Let's just keep the scalpels away. Vector nodded. That's the plan. Behind the glass, the pulse monitor glowed steadily. No more spikes, no more alarms. Jack exhaled slowly and leaned back against the pillow. But he didn't close his eyes. 3 days passed. In that time, the parasite remained calm. Jack stayed under close observation in the Edge module, which was beginning to feel less like a medical cell and more like a studio apartment outfitted with too many scanners. The air smelled like recycled antiseptic. His food came from a pressurized hatch. He kept sane with old Earth movies and conversations with Wren and Vecta, who took turns monitoring his vitals and running comparative analysis on the parasite's pattern. Dr. Greaves, in contrast, never entered the room again. His requests to resume extraction planning had been stonewalled. After the Pulse incident, even Colonial Command signaled caution. You don't provoke something that can think and broadcast unless you understand its rules. Jack had started talking to it more, not out loud, not often, just internally. He imagined it could feel tone, mood, intention. When he thought calmly, he felt it rest. When he got anxious, it stirred like a restless cat under his ribs. He tried naming it once. Sarah, he whispered one night. Unsure why that word came to mind, it felt right somehow. When he thought it, a low pulse tapped from within. Wren noticed the movement on the monitor the next morning. You're talking to it again. I think she knows her name, Jack said. Wren didn't argue. She only raised an eyebrow and returned to adjusting his electrolyte levels. Vector visited that evening with results. She pulled up a display with comparative scans taken over the past 6 days. "This thing's not just bonded to your tissue," she explained. "It's mimicking your cell signatures. Every day, the overlap becomes more refined. It's not masking itself, it's becoming part of you." Jack looked at the glowing 3D render of his chest. "That's permanent, isn't it?" "I think it always was." He leaned back, quiet. Then, "Am I still human?" Ren, listening from the side, replied, "You're healing. You're alive. You've got full neurological function, cognitive clarity, empathy, and an unfortunate taste in 20th century action films. So yeah, I'd say you're human." Jack cracked a smile. "I'll take that." The next disruption came from outside. At 4:30 colony time, a medical shuttle from another outpost docked unannounced. Inside it, a man named Dr. Violin disembarked, one of Greaves' personal acquaintances. Violin was an aggressive research surgeon, known for publishing fast and asking permission later. Somehow, he had acquired copies of Jack's scans. He arrived at the observation deck and demanded access. Vecta refused. Ren backed her. But Volin had authorization from an executive authority above both of them. Colonial Medical Ethics Board Level 3 override. He had orders to remove the symbiote forcefully if needed. When Jack saw him arrive through the glass, he knew something was wrong. Volin didn't move like the others. He didn't look. He calculated. Jack could feel the parasite shift inside him again, tense as a drawn cord. "Nope," Jack said, standing. "You're not getting in." Volin activated the door override. An alarm triggered. But before he could step through, a forceful shockwave knocked him back. Every console in the monitoring deck sparked. One tech collapsed. Greaves, watching remotely, issued an emergency freeze. Ren shouted. The parasite protected him. Jack stood inside the module, unscathed. The glow from the containment field flickered and then stabilized. The parasite had pushed a bioelectric surge through Jack's skin in less than a second, converting stress signals into directed interference. When the team reviewed the footage, Volin was already in a med bay with a mild concussion and a fractured wrist. Greaves called in a remote tribunal, and the parasite's fate became the center of political debate. In the end, the decision came from Colonial Ethics and Command, with full legal documentation. Jack Turner would not be operated on. The symbiotic organism posed no proven threat. Further study could only proceed with consent. Jack's body was his own. Greaves protested loudly, but he was recalled 3 days later and replaced by a cooperative liaison. Vecta delivered the news personally. "You're cleared," she said. "No more scans, no more restrictions. They're pulling down the containment field next rotation." Jack exhaled long and slow. "So I can go?" "You'll be on the observation list, but yes. You're free to leave." He looked around the room at the equipment, the dim lighting, the corner where he'd paced endlessly. "I didn't think it would end this way." Ren leaned against the doorframe. "Neither did we. We thought we'd be calling in a priest. Or a xenoparasite extraction team." Jack tapped his chest lightly. "Turns out, she just wanted to be left alone, just like her host." He grinned. "Maybe that's why we get along." 3 weeks later, Jack boarded a civilian shuttle bound for a survey colony out near the Kryn Belt. It wasn't glamorous, but it was far, quiet, and offered work as a geological consultant, something Jack found oddly relaxing. No scalpels, no labs, no containment fields. Just rocks and wind and a sun that rose too slow for emergencies. He checked in monthly with Vecta and Ren. The updates were boring, and they liked it that way. The parasite Sarah, as he now called her openly, had stabilized. No more pulses, no interference. Just gentle activity during rest and minor temperature regulation. She had integrated completely. Jack kept logs. Eventually the logs became lectures, then articles, then a small book published under the title Living with the Quiet. It was never a bestseller, but in some research circles it was mandatory reading. And the little bit of research he did became pretty clear. You can't just fake logs until the legendary oval helicopter. Other patients began reporting similar organisms. Not many, just a few. Each had stories like Jack's. Trauma, survival, and something extra hidden beneath the skin. They were watched, yes, but not hunted. One day, years later, Jack returned to Outpost 17. He walked through the medical deck as a guest speaker. Wren met him with a hug. Vecta offered him tea. Greaves had long since retired, his name mostly forgotten. In a small seminar room, Jack stood before a group of young medics and researchers. He tapped his chest once and said, "This little hitchhiker saved my life. I didn't invite her, didn't understand her, but she taught me something no textbook ever could." He let the silence linger, then finished. "You can't dissect everything you fear. Sometimes you just have to listen." They applauded. He smiled. Under his skin, something moved. And this time, it felt like contentment.